pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America
and to
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And roll call, please.
Ken Nelson,
Here.
Linda DeGray,
Here.
Charles Ladd, Mary Scott, Virginia Higley,
Here.
Francis Alimo,
Here.
John Petronella,
Here.
Jane Thorogood, Danny Grillo,
Here.
and Richard Suzak is here.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to sit Vinny as an alternate for a permanent seat. And is John in? John is not in.
Yes, yeah, I'm here.
Okay, and John for the missing members for the remainder of the meeting. Next, can I get an approval of minutes for August 3rd, 2020?
So moved.
Second. Linda.
Any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, is there anybody in the public right now that would like to speak to the commission about any issues that are not currently on our agenda? If there is, please speak up. Seeing none, moving on to bond releases. SPR 1711, 3 Parsons Way.
Ken, I was over there today and it looks very nice.
Good.
Yeah,
Jen?
you should have received a memo from Rick Rochelle regarding this item. He did go out and check everything on the site to make sure that the project was complete. So there were no issues with the bond release.
Yep, okay. Any other commissioners, comments or concerns? I'll
Mr.
accept the
Chair, I'll make a
motion.
motion that we approve the release of SPR 1711 Allied Rehabilitation 3 Persons Way. The landscape bond release in the amount of $4,500.
800.
That'd be 4,800.
Oh, really? The one I have says 4,500.
No, 4008.
Oh. The
Rick,
letter
is it
says
time to get
4,000.
your glasses or contacts fixed?
Actually, the letter-
I'll email you my sheet.
So I will say that I think it's a typo because Rick Rochelle's letter says 4,500 and it says 4,800 on the.
All right, and I'm reading that I'm reading the
I
actual.
go by the memo.
Yeah, okay, I'll go by our agenda rather than the memo.
Oh, you're right. It's in the memo.
No, I would go by the memo because the memo is what he researched, and so we just copy that into the agenda. So hopefully, usually we don't put the amount in the agenda anyway. So
Right, so drop the amount because I don't want to say the wrong amount.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that if Rick did research it, he would have the correct amount on there. So, and normally we would, we sort of indicate what the correct amount is, and according to his review, it says $4,500.
Is there a second?
Second,
Who's
Ginny.
Ginny seconded? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Seeing none, all in favor. Did I hear Charlie Ladd?
Yeah. Charlie, are you there?
No, I think you heard Frank. Frank, you're just on audio, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
All right,
I will,
I'm sorry.
rename you.
I'm sorry. I thought Charlie chimed in. Okay, next, continued public hearings. Public hearing 2980, or I'm sorry. I don't know why 118 Hazard Avenue is moved. How come 118 Hazard Avenue is not under continued public hearings?
It should be.
Yeah, that was a typo. That should have been moved up.
Okay, so continued public hearings, public hearing number 2980. Is there anyone here on behalf of the applicant?
I'll take roll. Ken Nelson,
Here,
Linda DeGray,
Here.
Virginia Higley,
Here.
Francis Limo,
Here.
John Petronella,
Here.
Vinnie Grillo,
Here.
and Richard Suzak is here.
okay. Anyone for the applicant here?
Oh, yeah.
Please just-
Board Bowler Engineering, and with me tonight is Benjamin Wells from Capital Development Group,
Okay,
Steve Humphreys from EGA Architects.
okay. And how about for the intervener?
For the intervener, Mr. Chairman, it's Attorney David Barham, and joining me is George Logan of REMA Ecological Services and Sigrid Gadwa from her ecology group, Kaya Ecology Services.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I would start off with the applicant. I know that you have had meetings with the intervener and his client, and some changes have been made. If you'd like to go over the changes, I see you have a presentation. I don't know if that includes the changes.
Yep, I will certainly go over these for you guys here. Just to kind of introduce myself, Jeff Board, Bowler Engineering again, 16 Old Forge Road in Rocky Hill, Connecticut, professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. And for those who were not here at the previous meeting, what's up here now is just an existing conditions plan that orients you to where the site is at 118 Hazard Avenue. To the north, which is to the right of the page here, is Hazard Ave, and then to the south is Middle Road. And then, just as you alluded to, we have made several strides since our last meeting, and one of the benefits into us continuing this hearing was that it also gave us the time to look through the staff comments we received from the town. We're happy to say that we've addressed all of the staff comments to date from engineering, fire, and police. I know one of the bigger issues during the last meeting was the emergency access drive that we had proposed, which was about 2,000 linear feet that made its way out to Middle Road to the south side of the site here. The first thing that we did was contacted the fire department, showed them truck turning templates throughout the site, and particularly amenable to getting rid of that emergency access drive. So we're happy to say that we've gotten rid of that from the current plan set that's before you this evening. And we've also, as I'll get into in a moment, provided a nice buffer between the existing agricultural field that's there today. One of the other benefits to this was that there was a decent amount of area that we were dedicating back to the town in perpetuity as an agricultural easement. That area has now gotten larger by about an acre due to the fact that we no longer have that access drive. If you recall, where that emergency access drive fell along the property line, we had stopped short with that easement. So we're able to kind of accommodate that now in more acreage. In addition to the emergency access drive being removed, we took advantage of it no longer being there, and at the request in direction and in concert with the intervener, their professional staff, we inserted several more trees to the west in this location. There were 5 more trees that were added. In the bigger of the areas that we added trees, there was over 16 trees, I believe, added to this vicinity here and here to the west and south where that emergency access drive was. So we feel that we took some of the species that were required from the intervener and incorporated that with our landscape architects into the set here. We also located a fire hydrant on the site at the direction of the fire chief. And we're currently conducting flow tests with Hazardville Water Company on the flows available within Hazardville area. So I guess the other thing that we took care of, there was some questions last time as to the sidewalk and use narratives on the application. What we sent in this time was a site narrative as to why we were requesting that sidewalk waiver. And I think from the environmental specialists on the intervener side and from our side, we felt that having a sidewalk along Hazard Avenue just promoted an unsafe condition, not only for pedestrians, but it was also damaging to the environment in that vicinity due to the fact there are some natural vegetated swales there, and you'd end up having to cross, I want to say it was over 600 linear feet of wetlands in order to just install the sidewalk. So I don't even know that a wetlands commission would be able to approve. So we included that. We had a letter that came with our application. And we also went through and listed out the additional uses, the accessory uses for the site that were included in that as well. So those are some of the big key takeaways. And I know from a development standpoint, the next step for us would be to submit to the Connecticut Department of Transportation for an encroachment permit application. We can't do that until we get local approval, but we'll basically be reviewing our driveway location, the traffic, the connectivity, and the utility connections. So that review will be taking place over the next 60 to 90 days with the DOT. And with that, unless anyone had any questions, I know the interviewer didn't have the last hearing to go through their letter or their presentation. So unless anyone had any questions, I could turn it over to those folks.
Commissioners, any questions for Jeff?
I know we had originally discussed the fact that the town does want to see some sidewalks there along, I guess, Hazard Avenue. And I did look at, the area that is there right now. And I believe that to the east, there is a sidewalk that runs just about from South George Washington Street. I guess there's a residence at the end of South George Washington Street that doesn't have a sidewalk. But then it does pick up at that Krishna Medical Center and runs just about to, and I guess there's another little area that doesn't have it, but then it runs all the way down to the Trinity Health area. And that's a significant distance to have sidewalks. And again, I believe that, this area will become developed in the future, regardless of what we think now. In 15, 20, 30 years, there will be a significant increase in the amount of traffic and pedestrian traffic that'll be along that road. And for us to not have a continuous sidewalk or to strive to have a continuous sidewalk, I think that, ultimately the town will be responsible for putting that in. And I don't think that we should have the town responsible for that. And, I think that if there's some resistance to installing it now, we can make it a condition of approval that when the sidewalks do get installed in the vicinity of this, I guess improvements that we're making right now, that the owner or the applicant of that particular facility will be responsible for the installation of those sidewalks. Because I feel strongly that eventually time goes on and development will happen, and that will get developed, and there will be pedestrian traffic, and there will be a significant increase in the vehicle traffic. And to have people walking on a road is not a safe condition at all. You think that, having a sidewalk that goes to nowhere is a safety concern. Think about having to walk on a road that has a significant amount of vehicle traffic, and how much that is a lot worse condition than having a sidewalk that doesn't go to nowhere now, but eventually will go to somewhere.
So along those comments, I kind of agree with you to a point, Rich. And I would like to see sidewalks from the driveway entrance east, because the next parcel is for sale and it's going to end up being developed. And anybody in this facility could actually walk to a medical appointment in any of the plazas down the road. But to go from the driveway to the south at this point, I would say, at some point the town deems necessary at the expense of the owner of the property, they would have to take on the burden of putting those sidewalks in at a later date. But I'd like to see the sidewalks from the driveway to the east now.
Yep, and to that end, I think that makes perfect sense. And when we were talking about the difficulty in permitting and getting through wetlands, that was me talking, if we were to install them property line to property line, we don't have those same environmental restrictions as we do from our driveway to the east. So prior to that DOT encroachment permit, we can propose a sidewalk from driveway to the east. It's when you look on the plan to the west here, top of page, you can kind of see it's grayed out, but there's a wetland line that goes over the property line almost right up to the edge of Hazard Avenue. So it was basically our driveway to the west where the difficulty in that 600 plus linear feet of wetland crossing that I was referring to. But I agree in the sense of going to the east, and that if it makes sense with the connection to the medical facility, that would be something that we can look at now.
Are you okay with that, Rich?
Yes, yes. And in terms of, as long as we have, you know, the potential for, if the area to the west does get developed, that the town won't be responsible for. It will be the property owner. And he doesn't have to install it now for sure. But I think sometime in the future, it will be necessary.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment on those sidewalks.
go ahead, Commissioner Petronella.
Yeah, although I am for sidewalks, especially in that area, but my question is across the street, I think it's at 111 Hazard Avenue, and that's where the, I think it's the Country Diner property is.
Mhm.
Some 35 years ago when that was built, I believe the commission required sidewalks to be installed there, and they were installed. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, I'm going to say the town went out there and removed those sidewalks, and it's now grass. I have no idea why, but I just feel like here we are trying to require to put sidewalks in when 2 years ago the town went and took those sidewalks out across the street. I just a little bit hypocrisy there. I don't know if Lori, if you have an answer to that question of why those sidewalks were removed.
I do not have an answer to that. I could ask Public Works, but I don't know right now. Sorry.
Because those sidewalks, you know, they came from nowhere and they led to nowhere. The same situation that we're going to have here. Again, for future development, why were they removed? I really have no idea why.
I agree with you, John. Hazardville did the same thing. They spent all that money on brick sidewalks, and then the town went in and ripped up all the intersections and put concrete in.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but in this particular application, one, we really don't have the authority to waive sidewalks. And by doing this, we're not waiving them. We're allowing them to put in front of the developed site. And then down the road, when the future developments come, they may be required to add them, but it does connect this facility to all the other medical facilities once that in-between piece is developed, which we know is going to be some sort of a medical use.
Yeah. You know, again, Mr. Chair, I am for putting sidewalks in with this application. My question was just one of hypocrisy and hoping that the town's not going to go out and remove these sidewalks 5 years or 10 years down the road.
Let's get the answer. I mean, that's a great question, John. Let's find out what happened.
The only thing I could say is that nobody, I guess, talked to planning and zoning before they removed those sidewalks, because if they did, because I was on planning and zoning when that did happen. And we were all very surprised that the town went ahead and did things that are really, I guess, under the control of planning and zoning without consulting with planning and zoning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the town's known to do things like that. And if that's the case, without a reasonable explanation, I mean, maybe we require they be put back. You know, not that you're going to cross Hazard Avenue from this facility to the Country Diner. I mean, that would be a suicide crossing right there. But great question, John. And Lori, if you could get us the answer for that. Any other commissioners' questions before I let the intervener speak?
Mr. Chairman, I do for Jeff.
Go ahead, Commissioner Limo.
Yeah, just to follow up, our last meeting, we spoke about the roadway out front dovetailing off the comments from police traffic control.
Correct.
Been any corrections? Is there any widening, any deacceleration, any safety precautions taken into in the hand there?
We are not anticipating any changes or widening based on the DOT review that we are about to go through. Basically, what they'll do is they'll spend the first 4 to 6 weeks reviewing the plan, and if they feel that widening is necessary, which in our opinion, given the use here, it's probably the best type of use for a site like this, where there's 3 to 5% of the residents even have vehicles, and when they do go out, they're being shuttled. So the traffic from a development like this is rather minimal. We're not anticipating having to do any kind of roadway widening through the DOT approval.
Okay, I just want to be on the record for that because I stressed that at the last meeting, and I believe the Enfield police officer who wrote the memo as well thought that there should be some widening there. You know, traveling that road as a resident for many years, there's a little tight in that area, but if the DOT is okay with it and the engineers there say we don't need it, I just want to be on record saying that I think for safety issues, there should be some widening there. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Commissioner Limo. Any other commissioners? Hearing none. Okay, now I'd like to hear from the intervener, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is Attorney David Barham. First of all, I want to extend my gratitude to the commission for giving us an additional period of time to work together with the applicant. And I want to thank Jeff Ford, who was phenomenal to work with and helped us resolve our issues. So my thanks to him as well. We submitted 2 letters to the commission today. One is on stationary of ecological, and the other one is Kaya ecological. I'd like to focus on the REMA letter very quickly, and then I'd like to call on George Logan to just talk about a few of the details. This letter makes 3 recommendations to be added as conditions of approval, and it's my understanding that the applicant has agreed to it. Condition A deals with potential for elevated seasonal high groundwater tables, and the applicant has committed to do some testing, and if any modifications are required, that they would submit any plans to the town and give copies to the intervener as well. And I'll let Mr. Logan talk about that in a moment. Item B is a second condition, would have to do with guarantees for the planting. And I'd like to say that we were very pleased with the additional plantings that the applicant agreed to, and they really met all of our expectations. Item C is grading for the proposed wetland mitigation area, and to make sure that nothing impedes the surface sheet flow to the southern and western areas and to the north, where Mr. Schmurr, who we represent, does his agricultural growing. Above the recommendations, the paragraph right above it, it begins with the language, "We note that the commission may also wish to add another condition." It's not something that we're requesting as an absolute, but we want to bring it to the commission's attention, as we did at the last hearing, that we do believe there might be some potential contamination from the Amoco station to the east of the site. And the commission may want to look at that in the future, or have the applicant do some additional testing. Everybody tried to acquire greater records and data from DEEP, but we were all unsuccessful in obtaining additional records. So again, while it's not one of our 3 main conditions, we note it just for the benefit of the commission, and we'll let you decide what you want to do. And finally, while it's not on this sheet, I would just like to refer to our memo that we submitted for the prior hearing, where we also asked that the wetlands condition of the farmland preservation easement be also adopted by the zoning board. And I think you heard Jeff indicate a moment ago that an additional acre was added to that area because of the elimination of the emergency roadway, which I think the chair and a few others were questioning the need for at the last hearing. So I think that will benefit the town greatly, and we would just ask for the referral. I'd like to take a quick minute and just ask George Logan if he would briefly elaborate so that your staff, in suggesting what language to use for the recommendations, can understand what A, B, and C entail. So let me turn it over to Mr. Logan.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners, Chair. I'm pleased to say that this is one of the times when having a little extra time was wonderful. We were able to collaborate with Jeff, and I'm very thankful for that participation. And thank you, Jeff. So what we ended up doing was kind of putting these additional recommended additions for conditions of approval. The first one, as you might recall, we had some discussions at the last time that there are two stormwater management facilities, what we call BMP1 and BMP2. Those are both below ground retention, detention, and infiltrator systems. And as you probably already know, the recommendation or the guideline from the Connecticut DEP is that if you are going to propose such facilities, that they should be above seasonal high groundwater table, because then they will function as they're intended even when the groundwater is at its high point. That's critical for us because that will preserve the volume that is will be detained and retained within these facilities. This is the water quality volume, and that's what we're saying is a surrogate for mitigating increases in the volumes of stormwater runoff from the impervious surfaces. So in discussion with Jeff, he agreed that it would be possible just before construction to conduct a couple of soil test pits in the locations of those two western ones. Obviously, the one that's closest to the wetland is the one of greatest concern. And the idea was that if it looked like the groundwater was a little higher than we expected based on the geotechnical data, that there are some potential solutions. And these are not limited to the ones I'm just going to mention. There might be others, but the more simpler ones would be to utilize profile infiltrators that have a shallower profile. I believe that the ones that are used now, about 30 inches, are the ones that could be used, for instance, but could be 24 inches. And in order to accommodate that reduction of volume, we would then increase the spread of the infiltrator. So that would be one solution. Hopefully there would not be a necessity for that entire parking area to be elevated by several inches. So hopefully that the test pits would show that that would be a solution that could be had. So that is one of the main things we talked about. And I don't know that I need to read this, but obviously under the condition of approval, I think there's sufficient language there to accommodate this potential issue that we've identified. The second one is you would heard already before. For some reason, I'm echoing. Sorry about that. I haven't done anything here. Any rate, so has to do with the specifications and performance guarantees for the additional plants, but actually for all the plants. If Ms. Sigrun Godwa is on this call, I think I saw her name, she might, after I'm done, briefly tell you of some of the reasons for these plantings and why we're asking for these specifications, these guarantees. And the final one is fairly easy. I know this is a wetlands issue more than it is a planning and zoning issue, but where it intersects with planning and zoning is the idea that the wetland mitigation could be graded in a way so that it does not impede water that's coming off the fields heading in a northerly and northwesterly direction. That would not be something that's good, because obviously we don't want additional water to be sequestered even for a little period of time within the agricultural field, because that obviously would have an impact on the efficacy of that field to be able to be planted in early in the season. So those are the three things. And of course, we talked a little bit about the hazardous situation as far as contamination next door, and I'll let the commission contemplate that. I did want to add a couple of things regarding the sidewalk, and I'm glad to hear that the conversation ended that sidewalks from the driveway coming in and going in an easterly direction obviously is the most reasonable way to look at it, because there is a wetland ditch that provides functions and values going in an easterly direction. And some of these are quality of life and obviously health and safety types of things. So there's a stormwater quality function that provides a stormwater quantity function. And of course, as you're going westerly, that particular ditch doesn't end at the property end. It continues for several hundred feet further along the entire length almost of Mr. Chimura's property. So that will be quite an undertaking to get a sidewalk that entire section. And I also wanted to tell you that I looked at the aerial as we were talking, as you folks were talking, and those sidewalks disappeared across the street somewhere around 2016. And the total length was about 250 feet. I thought you might be interested in that. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions of me at this point.
So I actually am here.
That would be
So
Sigrun,
this is Sigrun. I could add a few things. First of all, you may wonder, we were quite concerned about all the shale that was deposited about 55 years ago, and that deposition was observed by the Chimura family. What I talked with Richard about this, and he said that actually, even then, they'd noticed a lot of the shale was crumbly shale. So when, I guess previously it had been locked within other rock, not exposed to water or to air. But when it was blasted out and then deposited and had plenty of sunshine and air and water, it just disintegrated and weathered and became soil, and has even been colonized over the last 30 years or so. And a forest is there now. So it's a situation where everybody's right, and we're so glad that there were in fact soil cores that could verify that there was not a lot of rock chunks that would be interfering with construction and the stability of the buildings. Also, I'd wanted to say that we're very appreciative that the applicant is willing to add, I guess it's 7 addition full size. Now these are really big trees, so they'll grow 120 feet eventually. Native deciduous trees. It's 2 pin oaks, 2 American sycamores. Those are absolutely beautiful trees with pure white bark, even prettier than the London plane tree, which is a hybrid sycamore, and 2 shagbark hickories and 1 red oak. And also there will be 11 evergreens, of which 5 are also broad, full-size trees, 5 white pines and 3 Norway spruces, and 3 are the native red cedars, which are very dense, excellent cover for wildlife, and they have pretty blueberries, which will self-seed, and hopefully there'll soon be a lot more native red, ornamental native red cedars. They're one of the prettiest low native trees we have in the state. I wanted to say that these trees are going to provide additional visual buffering to the south and southwest and west, especially in the winter time when the other trees have lost their leaves. The evergreens will provide visual buffering, some air pollution filtering, and though there are other trees proposed along Hazard Avenue, which will do the lion's share of the air pollution filtering that were already in the plan. Shade for the southern parking lot, and more shade for the western parking lot, and wildlife food and shelter. And they're also going to lower the temperatures of runoff, which will, I don't know that that's that important with infiltration systems, but the water that's leaving the infiltrators going into the soil will not have as wide fluctuations in temperature, and that's better for soil organisms, soil microbes, and any surface. It's going to be better for, if there's overflow in a big summer outburst. This is especially going to be applicable. And finally, the intervention had mentioned a lot of concern that the forest removal of the forest on that's currently occupying the footprint that grew so fast and well on the crumbly shale soil would result in a lot less transpiration and interception of precipitation, and perhaps increase runoff volumes even more than the calculations predicted. However, so these trees, at least once they get to be larger, are going to help compensate for the loss in the flood control function that all forests provide through their water uptake and transpiration. And so we're having flood control function is not just a wetlands function, it's a human planning and zoning function, and the additional plantings will help that function operate. And so I'm pleased that Mr. Chmura, the intervener, is now able to support the construction of this facility with the additional conditions that we've gone through in detail. Thank you. And this, for the record, I didn't usually I say my name and who I am at the very beginning, but for the record, this is Sigrun Gadwa. I'm the principal of REMA Ecological Services, headquartered in Cheshire with an office in Manchester. And I am a combination of a professional wetland scientist, a soil scientist, ecologist. And that should, I think you already have my resume, and I think that should do it.
So this is Attorney David Barham again. And in conclusion, again, we're just asking that you adopt conditions A, B, and C in our letter dated September 10th, 2020 on REMA stationery, and also include reference to the wetland stipulation about the farmland easement. And if you could just indulge us in one more minute, I'd like to ask Richard Chmura, who is our client and the intervener, if he could say a few quick words.
Well, I'm the adjacent property owner and farmer. I grow approximately 30 acres of vegetables for human consumption. These are grown on a home farm and additional rented land. With what I've been hearing with the new safeguards, with the trees for the buffers and the control of the water flow on a high water table wetlands, I think we should be in good shape to say that we can support the project. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. On Mr. Shimura's farmland currently, when we have a wet spring, you can notice those farm fields are underwater currently in the spring. So I understand not putting any more water there, but been an ongoing problem for years. As far as planting additional trees, if I'm correct, farm fields don't have any trees, do they? And with all that land, if he wants more trees and pretty trees, if this applicant meets the regulations of the landscaping per Enfield, which I believe he did before this, I'm not sure that this commission can require him to put them in. If he chooses to put them in, that's his choice. Lori, can you answer, did this applicant meet the landscaping guidelines before adding all these trees?
Yes, they did.
Yes, he did. Okay, and as far as C, the grading, this is not wetlands, this is planning and zoning. And they passed wetlands and did everything wetlands has requested them to do. I guess I'm not sure why you weren't at the wetlands meeting and now you're trying to bring up old business to planning and zoning and trying to spin it to where we make a condition of approval dealing with wetlands, which is out of our preview. So there's another one I'm not sure we can do. The elevated groundwater, everybody has talked for the meetings we've been here about all the testing that's been done on that property between the contamination and the shale and stuff like that. I would think one of these tests was actually to see what high groundwater was when they were doing it. And that's how they designed their drainage system, because I find it hard to believe you can design a drainage system if you don't know where high water is. So I guess I'm not sure that I can accept these, and I'm not one who feels to get your okay on this, you have a right to demand something be done on somebody else's property. If somebody wants pretty trees along their property line, have at it, they can have them, but this commission cannot mandate somebody go above and beyond what is required by the town of Enfield. You're welcome to challenge our regulation and, you know, ask for more plantings to be put in our regulations. But at this time, the applicant met the regulations.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney David Barham, if I may. The first thing is, I believe that this is by agreement. We're not demanding that the commission do something. We have met at length with the consultants for the applicant, and this really has become a joint agreement. So I think if you ask Mr. Board, you'll find out that they are in concurrence with all three recommendations. As an intervener, we certainly have the right, and I think that the chair acknowledged that at the last hearing, to take an appeal. That wasn't our goal. I stated from the outset, we had some specific concerns to help preserve the viability of the agricultural use. And as long as that was met, we were 100% in favor of this application. And we are 100% in favor of it, provided those three conditions are included in your approval. And that is with, again, the concurrence of the applicant. So I wouldn't view it as we're demanding something. We've worked long and hard with the applicant to try and come to a resolution. There has been give and take on both sides, and this is really a joint resolution. As far as the wetlands go, while it's true that there's some jurisdiction over wetlands, I would point to your regulations 7.10.7, which talks about structure. You have control over surface water flow in terms of the buildings, and to adopt that recommendation, which again is a joint recommendation. It's not something we're asking the commission to do as a mandate. It's being presented by both parties. You certainly have jurisdiction over surface water to make sure that no buildings create more of a problem. It's one of those overlapping jurisdictions, if you will. So rather than look at it as the intervener requiring the commission to go beyond what the acceptable requirements are, this is a joint recommendation. And I think when you ask the board, he'll tell you, sorry for that feedback, I'm sure he'll tell you that they have agreed to this. We would not have sent the letter in if we weren't sure that you know they supported these recommendations. So to avoid any future litigation and hold this project up another 6 months to a year, given the closure of the courts and the fact that almost nothing is happening, it just seems to me this is an easy thing to decide when you have both the applicant and intervener in agreement. And you know, again, I compliment you and the commission, because I thought you were urging us to have these conversations so that we could come to an agreement, and we did exactly that, and it worked out. You know, we're here holding hands, just asking that you endorse what we've worked on.
And I never said I wouldn't endorse it, but to make it a condition of approval is going above and beyond our regulations. And I'm not going to be anybody's pawn to do their dirty work by mandating these people do this. If you have a gentleman's agreement with them, all the power to you, and it's very great that you two worked it out. But to make us be the judge and jury and force them to do something that is not required, and then you sit here and tell us that, well, if they don't do it, or you don't make it a condition of approval, we're going to tie it up for a year in court. That's blackmail. And that's exactly what you're doing to these people. They want to get their development done. They've agreed to do these. I'm telling you, per our regulations, I don't have the authority to make them do anything that they don't want to do above and beyond the regulation. So you said you have an agreement with these people. Things have worked out great. So why don't you just take their agreement and accept that? And because if we allow you to do this, commission as your jury or your judge, then the next person's going to do it. And we have regulations to follow. These people met the regulations. If they want to do what you asked them to do, but the town's not mandating it, then that's fine. They can do it. But I will not support you demanding they do things, or you're going to tie them up in court for a year. Listen to what you said. Listen back on this meeting. Everybody watching right now heard exactly what you said, and it's blackmail. And Mr. Chmura, you also made a comment about, good, you know, you don't want the sidewalks heading to the south because he has a swale that runs the whole length of his property. We're not eliminating these sidewalks. We're just postponing the installation of them until Mr. Chmura sells his property. And then they can put the sidewalks on the inside of the swale closer to his property. So we're not waiving the sidewalks. And Mr. Chmura will have to put sidewalks down his property either. One of you made a comment that, you know, you're good with it because then he don't have to add them to his property. That is not what we're saying. I don't like being pushed, and you're pushing us to do your work. So if you have a gentleman's agreement, that's great. But are you telling me right now that if we don't make these conditions of approval, you're going to take this to court?
Mr. Chair, I think you're misinterpreting.
No, I asked a question. I asked you a question.
That's not my decision. That's my client's decision. He operates a farm that has historic relevance to the town of Enfield. And I would think that the town would be very proud of his operation. There aren't too many towns that can showcase such an agricultural endeavor. We submitted letters from the state and from different commissions supporting the idea of trying to preserve farmland. And Enfield has done a terrific job in that. And we're not here to mandate anything. Again, we did what the commission suggested we do. We met with the applicant. It's no different than the applicant saying to you, we would like to do some amenity. It's not required, but they're offering it. And so
Okay,
if you
right.
like
So
it, you take it.
we're
But
on
we
the
don't
same
have
page.
we don't have a legal agreement with the applicant on these items because nobody in their wildest imagination expected anybody to suggest if we came in with a joint resolution that it wouldn't be adopted by the town as long as you felt it wasn't harmful to the project. This is all a benefit to the project. We are not trying to blackmail the town at all. I mean, I've never been before a commission where there's a joint recommendation where it is characterized as blackmail. I mean, that's not the case at all. I mean, you're an experienced chair. You understand. These are things that will benefit the project. And I would, ask you to reconsider and to look at this as a positive. And this doesn't set precedent because
Chairman, I have a suggestion, if I may, please.
Please, just hold on.
Okay, well, my hand's up.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Your commission.
Well, I was going to suggest, what you were saying, a legal agreement. If you guys have an agreement in your property abutters, why can't you have your attorneys draw up a document stating everything here that we're talking about and add it part of the deeds of the land and, keep it away from us. It's your agreement. And you could simply just execute a document and both property owners sign it. And that would be binding. Like the chairman said, if it's not part of our regulation, it's kind of pulling it into our regulation or having us oversee something we don't have authority over. So if you can just do an agreement between you guys, that's great. Just,
Adding, Dave, adding, 50 trees, adding above and beyond what they're required, how is that beneficial to the applicant?
First of all, the addition of the trees is not an ornament. If you heard, the two consultants, this has to do with containing water, creating an environment so that the crops won't be affected and the wildlife will flourish. There are a lot of reasons for this, and the applicant has their own scientists and ecological consultants on board, and they agreed to this. I'm puzzled by the whole thing. If the applicant opposed this, they would have said that not only tonight, but when we were talking to them, they would have said that's not acceptable. We're not willing to do it. They're the ones that are presenting the plan to you. Yes, we helped influence, but I would be surprised if when Jeff speaks, if he says that in any way we ever threatened them. We did not.
I would say to that end, there was no necessary threat in conversations after the meeting. We did hear at the last meeting that it would be held up in court should we not play nice. And
Correct.
We met all of the requirements at the last submission. And, two of these conditions are things that are common engineering practice anyways to do the test pits. So that's something we would have been doing. And then the grading in the wetland mitigation area, that is a given, and we wouldn't impact the agricultural field there. So it really just leaves down to, all it boiled down to was the additional plantings. And again, to the commissioner's point, the plan that we did present was signed off on by our professionals the first time around. And this was just us being a nice neighbor, trying to go above and beyond to avoid any conflict and to be getting on the same page. And that did happen, but it was under the premise that, this was going to get held up for various reasons. So we 100% meet the town of Enfield code on this application and the one previously submitted. We meet the state code from a drainage and sanitary, stormwater, everything. So we are fully compliant with all of the regulations. So I'll leave it at that. I don't know, Ben, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I've stayed quiet on this quite a bit. Obviously, I'm represent the owner, and I let kind of Jeff handle the negotiation process and those phone calls. I wasn't thrilled with in Ben Wells, 22 Andover Road, Old Westbury, New York, with Kaplan Development Group. I'll state for the record, but I wasn't thrilled with the threats, the letter of intervening, and obviously hearing that you were trying to, let's say, for lack of better term, sabotage the project or hold it up. I mean, that never goes well. We have a lot of money invested in this. We have spent a lot of time here, and one where, if anything, we're providing a very low impact use that's going to keep residents in Enfield in the community. We're a very, big tax rateable, provide employment and so forth. And, we have a very solid reputation in New England, and we're trying to be in the market. I've been to various planning board hearings, and through my years doing this is my 11th All-American amongst many other prototype buildings. And nobody wants to be handcuffed and told, well, we don't like this, and this is why, and unless you do these things, we're not gonna agree to your project. So I've been quiet for the most part, and our intent is to build a beautiful facility. It's residential in nature. We are not going to disturb the surrounding environment. We're not going to pollute anything, and we want to have our own buffer between our neighbor. We're not going to have a building that is an eyesore that stands out. And again, it's residential in nature. It's not an institutional building, but I don't want to be handcuffed and told I must do this. And I certainly will not sign a separate agreement. I'll tell you that right now, binding us to any additional improvements on our lot.
Thank you, Ben.
So, Mr. Chair, again, I don't want to belabor it, but Mr. Wells indicated that he would not sign a separate agreement. It's much easier to have the commission adopt these recommendations, and then they are enforceable by the town.
I can't enforce something that's not in our regulation. I can't do it. I will not do it.
Well,
You as an attorney.
I think if you ask your town attorney, Mr. Chair, you will find out that if there's a joint recommendation and the town approves it, it is fully enforceable.
Joint recommendation is when both parties agree wholeheartedly. I just heard Mr. Wells state that you said, if you don't agree, we could tie you up in court. And you have said that. And I asked you, if we didn't make it a condition of approval, would you tie this up in court? Because you agree with everything except you want 50 trees that we do not require. So will you support this project without us putting it as a condition on a gentleman's agreement between the two of you? Because you can't ask a judge to give a speeder a life sentence. It's not in the law. Our law is our regulation. And I'm following the regulation. And because this gentleman doesn't like what's going in next door to him, he doesn't have the authority to demand anything. If you guys work something out, great. And it don't go to court. That's what we all want to do, is get along. But to ask us to be your hammer, it's absurd. Mr. Suzak.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak? This
Chair,
is Lori.
I guess, okay. Lori, do you want to go first, or?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, I guess, I'm hearing the discussions that we're having, and typically what we do is we ask for recommendations from the various departments that are in town. And the only thing that I'm thinking is that normally what we do is we include the recommendations of those departments that, have, some value in making the project go forward without delaying the project. And what I see this situation being is that the intervener is like a department that in town saying that, we would recommend for this to happen. And normally what we do always ask is we always ask the applicant if he agrees with these conditions that we're imposing on him, regardless of what's in our regulations. And I don't think that, it's far-fetched to think that, we don't have some control over what's going on in terms of, I think that in terms of the trees were already shown on the plans that we received. So basically they were added even before we saw the plans. But now that we see the plans and there's some other conditions, we could hold it up and saying, you have to really change your drawings to upgrade them to include these conditions. And then all of a sudden it becomes a moot point. But normally in the interest of keeping things going and providing, all the, applicants and all the interested parties, moving forward, we include some of these conditions as part of the process that, this is what is recommended. Everybody agrees that this is in the best interest of the project and that we can include that, those conditions to keep the project going. And I would take that position that, we look at it as being recommendations from another department, whether it's our town department or the intervenor department, but that everybody has agreed that these are acceptable conditions, and in the interest of not delaying a vote and not delaying approval of this, application, that we include them in our conditions and not necessarily look at them as being blackmailed, but that everybody's in agreement and nobody wants to delay the project any further than it's been delayed by having the applicant go back and change all his drawings to upgrade it, because that might be another month and a half. So that in that interest, that we can just keep the project going.
What do you mean upgrade his plans, Rich?
Well, I think that, he can definitely change all his plans to include, all these conditions in terms of.
But we're not required. We're not asking for them. And so what you just said to this commission is every time an upset neighbor comes in front of us, you're going to count them as a department and you're going to let them add whatever requirements.
This is an intervener. It's not.
It's a disgruntled neighbor who hired an attorney. That's what it is. An attorney who just told this commission that if they don't do this, we're going to tie him up in court. And he said that to the owner of the property. So that is blackmail. The owner is sitting right here, Rich, and said it. We know how you love trees. They met the regulations. You don't have the authority to expand the regulations for a particular application.
Well, we're not requiring him to put more trees in. He actually put those trees in before he submitted those plans, regardless.
That last meeting, they weren't here. I just got the letter today.
Right.
About 4 hours ago.
Well, I think the plans are shown on aren't these plans shown on the drawing, those plantings?
Yeah.
The first meeting they were not, and then in discussions over the last month, we added several trees. So they're currently on the plans.
Okay, so those trees are in a plan. So basically, that's not really an item of conditions. We're not going to condition any additional plantings.
Okay, thank you. That's all I'm saying is we're not adding them as a condition.
Not the planting. But I think that, he can put a note on his drawings that says, we will, look at our, I guess retention basins and require that they be shallower based upon, doing test pits. And basically what we're saying is that, we'll just include that as a condition of our approval so that,
No! Whoa, excuse me.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
May I speak? And
yes,
I just want to remind the commission that this is an intervener status. This isn't just somebody next door. The point of the intervener, and I will read this again, they file because they believe that the proposal may involve conduct which has or which is reasonably likely to have the effect of unreasonably polluting, impairing, or destroying the public trust in the air, water, or other natural resources of the state. What they have tried to show is that their concerns have been water quality, air quality, and things of that nature. So they do have the right to be here. They do have the right to the status. And the PZC is basically their jurisdiction is to consider the evidence and testimony presented by the intervener when ultimately deciding whether to approve, modify, or deny the application for the assisted living facility. I do believe that you can add some of the conditions that are not necessarily standard with our Planning and Zoning Commission requirements. But with that said, and I want to reiterate what Jeff Ford was saying, the groundwater monitoring in first light, if you look at it, that is a wetlands issue. However, it is also a requirement when you're designing a drainage system. And they should always be above the high water mark. And all professional engineers know this, and they will do so in the field at the last minute to make sure that they are they haven't missed anything and that they're designing the system properly. The wetlands grading, again, not a problem. And what was the other one? Initial test holes, yes, so test holes for the modeling, and yeah, that's it. So really, we're just down to the landscaping. And quite honestly, if the applicant is amenable, then I think that we should just say that we would like to approve the plan as proposed with the landscaping. Now, I think they talked about, the size of the plantings, and that might be a debate because we do not require typically the largest size of trees. But I do want the commission to realize that this is a legal status that the intervener has, and they have a right to show that there may be impairments to the environment, and that's what they have tried to show.
I understand. And I never said they didn't have a right to be here. I agree. Just like the 60 years of fertilizers and chemicals that have been dumped in the farm field next door, that had a huge impact on that soil also. And the contamination on the property on the other side of this, requiring this applicant who had nothing to do with that contamination to monitor the flow, that it's got nothing to do with this applicant. They should be at the owner of the property that contaminated the soil and ask him to continue to monitor it, which, if I'm correct, they get monitored, I believe, for 20 years after the cleanup to make sure there's nothing else going on. And I believe at the first meeting, they said they did test this soil and it was fine. But for somebody to come tell us, and you can say interveners have a right to be here, they were hired by a neighbor. Okay, so because they hired an attorney, that doesn't give any more clout or bullying, because that's what this is, bullying. You give me 50 trees or I'm tying you up for a year in court. The owner of the property has stated that. The attorney has stated that, and he won't agree to this project because he wants 50 additional trees. You tell me. I mean, how else do you word blackmail? Either you do this,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm going to do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I can address your comments very quickly. Number one, there were 2 meetings, I believe, between the 2 parties, and I did not participate in those. Those were left up to the consultants who have the expertise. I never, and I'll state it uncategorically, I never threatened the applicant that we would blackmail them or go to court. I mentioned it at the last hearing when we were talking about what the legal status of an intervener was, and I indicated that as an intervener, we have party status and we have the right to appeal. And I also put it in the context, not as a threat, but as an offer to try and work together. I have never talked to Benjamin Wells, ever. And I only talked to Jeff Ford in trying to arrange these meetings so that everybody could have time to meet on the telephone or by Zoom, however they did it. And I did not even participate in those meetings. So I have to take issue with the allegation that we blackmailed anybody, that we threatened anybody. That's offensive. I'm sorry, that's offensive. And you can't, obviously, there's a chip on your shoulders in terms of Mr. Schmura and his agricultural land. I just don't get this at all. I don't maybe you want to recuse yourself if you come in with such a bias and prejudice against the farmland next to you. I mean, your comments are outrageous. And I'm insulted by it. And I've never said this before at a hearing. I'm insulted by what you've alleged. And if you don't feel that you can objectively rule on this, then I would suggest you step down and recuse yourself.
Objectively rule on the zoning regulations we have in place? Absolutely. I'm all for it.
If you listen to the tape of what you just said,
I heard what I said.
It's embarrassing.
But you won't answer the question. If we don't make it a condition of approval,
I will recommend to my client, it's his choice, that based on your comments tonight, that he appeal this, if you don't include those as conditions. That would be my recommendation. There are two other people on this team, and of course, Mr. Schmura makes the final decision. But if you want to know what I recommend, and I would never have recommended this if I hadn't heard what you said tonight, but based on what you said, yes, my recommendation would be to appeal this.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So obviously, I do not want to tell you how to run your commission or the commission how to run things. And I understand the planning and zoning, but I do not think that the failure of the stormwater management system will be in the interest of the town or of this commission. And I'll just give you one little example. And this is something that we talked about the last time, I believe. So if you look at the westernmost best management practice, BMP 1, the existing surface elevation now at this point is 129 feet. And the bottom of the galleys would be at 128 feet. The elevation of the adjacent wetlands is at about 128 feet. When we were out at the site in May, before we were told that we couldn't come back, we had saturation to the surface in that area of this stormwater management system at about 128 feet, between 128 and 129. So it looks just from this, and this is just one example, that the bottom of the galleys would be in the groundwater, at least in the springtime. And that is an issue. We certainly, I don't think it's in the interest of the commission for the failure of the stormwater management system. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I agree with you 100% on that. And that's why I don't know an engineer who would design a water system without getting the high water marks. I've been building for 30 years, and before I put a septic in, the health districts there, they climb in the hole and they check high water marks. So to design, I'm going to say a multi-million-dollar parking lot without finding the high water, I just don't even know how that would be a condition, because one, the town engineering would never approve it, because this has to get approvals through all of them when the plans are submitted. So George, I agree with you 1,000% on that.
Okay, and I think what they did is they relied on the geotechnical stuff, and probably there wasn't the time to go out and get additional
Right,
information.
springtime, April.
Yeah, all right.
Yep.
Yeah, can I say something, please?
Who's speaking?
This is Sigrun Gadwa. I'm the other consultant here,
Sure.
along with George. The test pits, which were actually not part of the plans that were submitted to you, but we were provided with them, were done in October. And they didn't have soil colors. They didn't have modeling data. And what we were mystified by this too. How could they design it without having the high water table, the information you needed from a spring soil core or at least modeling data showing where the high water table is. And what Jeff explained to us is that they routinely will do tests just before construction. And if they find modeling, if they find that the high water table is in fact higher, they'll just make an adjustment in the field. They'll enlarge the array and drop and raise the thing a little bit. And so their practice is to save time and money on the application process and make the assumption that the high water table is, make a good guess at it, but realizing that in fact it may well be higher. Now you should read the 2 short letters that we submitted, and unfortunately we just submitted them today. And I should ask Lori, will they be part of the record? If this were old-fashioned times, we would hand you the paper letters and they'd be put in the record. Were they able to be put on the website or not?
They were
Those 2 letters.
They were put
Were the
on
2
the web-
letters, one from Carrie and one from Rima, were they able to be put on the website?
Yes, I'm trying to answer you. Yes, they were put
So
on the
they
website.
are part of the record.
They
And
are
I
part
could-
of
I
the
can-
record. They were put on the website and they were sent to the commission. Even
Yeah, and
though
I'll
Yeah,
just say-
okay.
today-
Now, I'm sure the commissioners may not have had time to read them, but there is an introductory section to the REMA letter, which goes into detail explaining this. And there was missing data. There was no soil modeling data, which would have, if they had done that, we would know where the spring high water table was, and it could have been designed correctly to start with. And perhaps it was a fluke that the ground was so wet as it was when we went out there. And so we don't know, but we will know when they do the soil the soil log. And one of the parts of the commission is that both the town and also the intervener be provided with the logs for the test holes that they do in those areas, and also with any changes that they come up with to address the situation. So that it be documented, and that the engineering department have it in their records along with the application.
I would even agree as far to say that maybe a town engineer be on site when they do a test pit to determine the ground modeling.
I think that would be a great idea. That'd be a great idea.
Again, I have no problem whatsoever with that one. And like I said, I'm kind of shocked that the design was done without modeling. But yes, I have no problem making that a condition of approval, and I'm good with that.
And I'll jump, I can jump in to explain this a bit. Sigrun, can I have 1 second here?
Yeah.
Common engineering practice, when we do these, we don't always have the benefit of doing them in March and April in the wet seasons. So the geotech report that we did have, which was included as an appendix to our drainage report that the engineer had seen on a couple of occasions, we didn't find modeling in those 2 test pits on the side, and the groundwater elevations in those locations are 2 to 3 feet at the time of design lower than our system. So common engineering practice is, once you do get to construction in an area of concern like that, I sign and seal these plans as a design engineer stating that they function and they will infiltrate as designed. That's when we typically do those test pits. And as they described earlier, the field changes that would be required in order to make that happen would just be a wider footprint potentially with a narrower system. So it's common practice, and it's something we would have done anyways in the field as an engineer of record to kind of have that test pit in place to make sure it will function. And the other thing that we typically do is we design the basins in a conservative manner where we don't take into account infiltration. So they're typically oversized and kind of belts and suspenders, if you will, as it is. So we too want the volume control, want the reduction that our report says. So that's just standard engineering practice.
So Jeff, you wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah, just let me, had one more point. The chairman said 50 trees about 4 or 5 times. And in fact, the number of additional trees is 18, not 50. And as George had mentioned, and as Attorney Barham had mentioned, and as is written in our 2 very, very short letters that we put in the record today, trees suck up a huge amount of water, and especially, and the bigger the tree, the broader the tree, the more water they suck up. And so the flooding problem in that cornfield is it's going to reduce the likelihood that that's going to get worse because all those trees are being cut down to build the project. If we had put in 18 more big trees, or no, it was 3 small trees and 15 more big trees. And so that's, and we just, for the sizes, I just looked at what the sizes were of the other trees they were planting, the red maples and the mostly red maples and ginkgos, and they were 2-inch caliper. So that's why we asked that the new ones be 2-inch caliper as well.
Mr. Chair, it's Attorney Barham again.
Hold on one sec, Dave. Jeff, on the groundwater management, when you make a change like that in the field, do you submit the plans to the town before making that change and get the approval from the town?
Yes, depending on the change. Typically, if it is a change to the drainage system, we would submit something to John Cabibbo as the town engineer to get his blessing on a minor site plan.
And you don't have a problem with the town engineer coming out when you do a test pit to determine the modeling in the ground?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We would have a licensed soil scientist to do the test as well. So we would be happy to either share the log and or do the test pit.
Right. Okay. All right. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
That's okay. I didn't want to really get into a verbal dispute. I'm sure you didn't either. So just taking a step back, I'd just like to conclude by saying that as an intervener, we're here because we want to protect the ecology and the environment. And I thought we made a full presentation at the last hearing where we appropriately gave you all the information as Seagren and George have in brief fashion reiterated this evening. And it sounds like you don't have a problem with 2 of the 3 recommendations. The one that you seem to have a little more concern about are the plantings. And I agree with Commissioner Swayzak that the applicant is before you tonight with a revised set of plans. That's what's before you. I guess if you decided to reject those plans, then everybody would have to come back again with another revised set of plans because you only have one set before you. That's what was noticed for tonight. We support the revised set of plans. And while I understand there may be some concern by the applicant as expressed earlier, they nevertheless are in favor of those plans because they've endorsed them. And I think that they're presenting them to you tonight for approval. So based on both our presentation about the need for the additional plantings, which again have more to do with the ecology and the water consumption and not the a visual buffer. While it helps, it's not the main reason at all. I think the commission has every legal right to endorse and approve that plan, and I would urge you to do so. Again, we're here because we support this application as long as those 3 conditions of approval are in some way referenced in the plans. And I don't believe that the applicant is asking that those plans be withdrawn tonight. It may not have been their first choice, but obviously, they presented them, so they're submitting them for your approval. And otherwise, all the other issues that I raised at the first hearing with the application and the signature and the lack of a special permit, all those have been corrected. So this makes this a better application, a stronger application. It complies with all the legal requirements, and we support it as long as we have those 3 conditions, which again, we feel will enhance this project, preserve the ecology, And as everybody has indicated, 2 of the 3 are going to be done anyhow by your professional staff and by Jeff and his professional staff. So it's really coming down to the trees, and as Seagren Agro pointed out, it's 18 trees, and it serves a great purpose ecologically. So I thank you for your indulgence. I thank you for your indulgence, and I guess we conclude.
All right, thank you, Dave.
Chairman, Chairman Nelson, Richard Sherman right here.
Yes,
Could I say something?
sure.
Okay, these trees that we're talking about, they're not just pretty trees. Evergreen trees perform a special function. They can prevent the development of routine noise and dust, which will accompany production agriculture. It'll block wind and pollen drift, protecting people's allergic conditions, and it also improves air quality. These are considered vegetative agricultural buffers, which are incorporated.
I agree with you
Pardon me?
100% about that.
Okay.
But my
So
only
we're in
concern
agreement.
is, maybe if it was substituted instead of what they had for plantings, and I understand what you're saying about the trees you're requesting, and I agree with you. But to me, a compromise is, well, instead of planting trees that lose their leaves all winter, what if we went with the, trees that you're recommending? To me, that's working together, and that's how I do business, and that's how I think business should be done. But requiring above and beyond of somebody or else, I just don't agree with that. And I know you don't either. If somebody was doing something next to your land and demanded you did something, you wouldn't like it either. So
Well, we can all
right-
come to a mutual agreement.
And that what you just said, if we're willing to trade off the trees, I think the applicant would feel better about it. I think the town, I know me as a commissioner, I have no problem with that. And that's working it out. And I appreciate you coming back on, because that's what I want to hear. That's working, everybody working together. That's not being pushed into a corner. Thank you again. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Ben? So the plan you have in front of us has the additional trees on it.
Right. And I was, sorry, I don't mean to cut
Bird.
you off. I was gonna say, Commissioner, we are okay with this plan. I am not proposing that we go back. I'm not a man of my word. I had Jeff represent us in our negotiations with Mr. Chamora and his attorney, and we came to a common agreement. Granted, I do not want to sign a legal document. I am happy to do what is presented on the plan, but I know that there's going to be legal dollars involved with reviewing a plan. We spent additional money on this hearing because, one way or another, there's a letter of intervenence, and I would just like to move forward with this application, pending that everybody is acceptable of it. We are looking to be a good neighbor. That's all we want to do. We are an operator as well, so we are not developing this, collecting a check and walking away. We are here for the long run, and we are going to be running the day-to-day operation. So, of course, we want to get along with our neighbors. And that's all I really have to say.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, before I open it up to the public, anybody? Okay, at this time, I'd like to open up public hearing. Oh, geez, I got my papers. Public hearing 2980, 118 Hazard Avenue to the public. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor or against, or comments, questions, or concerns about the proposed special permit? Going for the first time? Public hearing 2980, 118 Hazard Avenue. Going for the second time?
Ken, this is Mary Ann Turner.
Go ahead, Mary Ann.
I know there's a lady, Lori Meacham, who's trying to talk. I don't think she knows how to make sure you can hear her.
Can you hear me?
There
Yes,
you
I
go.
can hear you,
I
Lori.
just figured
There
it
you
out.
know.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was
Thank
not
you.
looking for.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
My name's Lori Meehan and I own Peter Ashley Salon and the 2 acres across the street from where the assisted living is going to be built. The only concern that I have is where their driveway is placed. When I looked on the sketch, I think it's directly in front of my driveway, which would be 119 Hazard Ave. Yeah. So I'm a little concerned with that because we have a lot of traffic. I mean, it's really difficult for any clients, and the restaurant that's going to be opening up soon next door. That's probably not a concern because they can go out the other driveway. But where the driveway sits right now, I can see that being a real issue in terms of even the time frame from right around 3 o'clock to probably 5, depending on how the traffic is. It can get backed up from the light in front of Johnson Memorial, way past the salon. So I'm just a little concerned about that. And I've been listening from the beginning, and I was hoping or thinking maybe you might be doing something like you did down at the Hartford Hospital building where they have the right-hand turn going in. So that's really my concern is the in and out. I can see, I mean, there's several accidents always in front of the Country Diner. And here I could see that being an issue with people pulling to the right or to the left, or even coming east and then trying to pull into the salon with the way the traffic and the lights work. So I'm hoping that maybe, I don't know if you've done any with DOT. I don't really know anything about this. I'm just letting you know what
Yeah.
my concern is.
Yeah, and I could tell you basically what will happen if this does get approved this evening through local municipality here. We basically submit what's called an encroachment permit to the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and they review the driveway curb cut location, which in our case, they actually require us to line it up similar to what we're showing right across the street from another driveway, as opposed to having it shifted over slightly. It was slightly reconfigured in reviewing with the engineer, but ideally, it's common engineering practice to have that lined up across from a driveway on a street like this. The one benefit here is that the nature of this use, and again, I don't know if you were at the first meeting.
I did hear you.
So the benefit of a use like this is that I believe, and Ben can correct me if I'm wrong, there's 3 to 5% of the residents actually own vehicles. And then there is a shuttle, but the amount of traffic coming in and out of this type of use is rather minimal. So to answer your question, long and short of it is the DOT goes through a 4 to 6 week review process, and they could very well come back to us and have a comment about a driveway radius or a location or request a widening due to the traffic conditions that they're experiencing on other applications, because they'll have the traffic data from the intersection up near Tractor Supply and Hartford Health down to the Planet Fitness Road there with the other medical facility just to the east. So they review all that in totality, and then we usually get comments back from the DOT, and to formalize our submission, we're required to submit those plans to the town in final filing, and then back to the DOT for their approval before the contractor is able to get the bonds released to do the construction. So there is an extensive review process that goes through from their professional traffic engineers that looks at accident data, trip generation, a whole bunch of different scenarios. So hopefully that helps to answer some of the process. And then once we do have that approval, that would be the last approval required in order to start our construction.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I could
thanks,
just
Lori.
see head-on collisions here, because that's all. It's just the traffic really does get backed up around that time. So
Understood.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All set?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a new neighbor.
Thanks, Lori. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor or against public hearing 2980? Going for the second time. Going for the third time. Okay, hearing none. Along with Lori's comments, I kind of like the way they line up the driveways like that, because who knows, in the future, as traffic develops more, they may end up putting a light there, and that would benefit both parties. So, commissioners, how would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chair, should
Yes.
we address the request for a waiver for a sidewalk before we, continue further so that we have some direction as to what we're going to be doing with that sidewalk? As long as there's a waiver out there or a request for a waiver, I think we have to address it before we can proceed.
Right. If that's how you want to go, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I also would like to just say some words
Sure.
regarding just the intervener status before you close on your public hearings.
Okay, go ahead, Lori.
You want me to go now or
Yes.
afterwards?
Yep.
Okay, so again, I just want to remind the commission that you are actually the reviewing authority of this intervention. So it is up to you to decide whether the interveners have reasonably stated the case that there could be unreasonable environmental degradation. And if you believe that they've done that, are the proposed conditions reasonably to satisfy any potential pollution? I just realized my video is off, sorry. So, I mean, that is your purview. So I think you have every right to approve what has been agreed upon. I think the two issues with the wetlands and the groundwater are really a moot point. It's going to have to be done no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the applicant has shown that the trees are going to help the water quality and the air quality, among some other things. But that is up to you as the commission, and you need to make that decision on the record. That could be done after the public hearing is closed or before. It's really up to you.
Okay. So Commissioner Suzak, on the sidewalks, are we in agreement that we go from the driveway to the east and we make it a condition of approval that to the west, at a later date deemed necessary by the town, the applicant would be required to extend those sidewalks?
Yes, that's exactly the direction I think we should go.
I agree 100%. Commissioners, any comments? Okay, seeing none. And then who's
Should I
that?
make a motion to, again, to approve the request for a waiver with the modifications that we've indicated and then indicate that as a condition of approval?
Yes, but at this time, I would ask that you withdraw your motion and we open it back up to the public, knowing that that's what we are agreeing to do with the sidewalks, and see if anybody has any concerns about that, and then we'll close the public hearing and then go to your motion.
All right, I will withdraw.
Okay. At this time, is there anybody who would like to speak in favor or against public hearing 2980 with the adopted sidewalks that I believe the commission is coming to an agreement with the applicant and the intervener going for the first time? And it doesn't have to be about the sidewalks. It can be about anything to do with this application. Going for the second time? And the third time? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing 2980.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion to close
Motion.
public hearing 2980.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ken Nelson,
4.
Linda DeGray,
4.
Virginia Higley,
Ginny,
did we lose her?
can we take
Mute.
down the screen so I can get everybody's face back up? Because some people mute, and there we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Ginny's muted. Yeah, she's shaking her head yes.
Okay, there we go.
Francis Alimo,
Yes.
Don Petronella,
4.
Vinnie Grillo,
4.
and Richard Suzak is 4.
All in favor. Okay, at this time, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the request for a waiver for the sidewalks as submitted in our packet dated August 27th. And more or less make a condition of approval that we are going to require sidewalks, but only sidewalks presently from the driveway of the new facility to the east. And the sidewalk to the west of the driveway will be installed at a later date when there is a need and some definition as to, you know, the direction that the sidewalk is going to be installed in or with.
Second.
With the way you worded that, Rich, I think we're better off to vote and deny. I am going to deny it. And part of a condition of approval will be what you just said, because if we vote to approve to waive the sidewalks, we're kind of contradicting ourselves.
All right. Yeah, okay. Why don't I just reiterate and just say, I'll make a motion that we approve the request for a waiver for not having any sidewalks.
Correct. Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner
Motion's
DeGray.
made and seconded. Roll call.
Ken Nelson,
Against.
Lyndon DeGray,
Against.
Virginia Higley.
She said against.
Okay, Francis Alamo,
Against.
John Petronella,
Against.
Vinnie Grillo,
Against.
Richard Suzak is against.
Okay. And now I will entertain a motion with the 4 conditions of additional conditions of approval, I believe, Rich?
Yes, yes. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for public hearing 2980, dated July 16th, 2020, and updated to the September 10th meeting, as prepared by the planning department with the 26 conditions listed, with an additional 4 site-specific conditions. There is 1 current site-specific condition, and we're going to indicate 4 additional site-specific conditions. And the 3 of the site-specific conditions will be conditions A, B, and C, as indicated on the REMA report dated September 10th, 2020. Submitted for, you know, the All-American Assisted Living 118 Hazard Avenue, Enfield, Connecticut. And the additional 4th site-specific condition will be that sidewalks will be required, and that the installation of the sidewalk to the east of the driveway will be required during this current construction period, and the sidewalk to the west of the driveway will be required at a later date that is conducive to connecting the sidewalks to future sidewalks to the west.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner DeGray.
Okay. Any comments or questions about this before we move to a vote?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Petronella here. Do we have all the staff comments in on this applicant?
I believe I saw them all in the packet.
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There were quite a few of them.
Okay, just checking. All right, no further questions for me.
Okay, any other commissioners? Okay. I am gonna be in favor of this application. I appreciate the applicant taking the time to work with the intervener and the neighbor. I believe they are gonna be a good neighbor, and we may not like being pushed, but if that's what it takes to avoid a lengthy delay, I understand why the applicant did it, and that is the reason I would support this. Go ahead, Rich. Roll call, please.
Okay, Ken Nelson,
4.
Linda DeGray,
4.
Virginia Higley, 4. Francis Alamo,
4.
John Petronella,
4.
Vinnie Grillo,
4.
And Richard Suzak is for. And I will also go on record saying that I think the intervener indicated and did show the value of providing these additional conditions as part of our approval so that we maintain the integrity of the ecological and water quality of the site and the site to the west of this particular application and construction site.
Thanks, Rich. All in favor, none against? It's unanimous. Congratulations, Ben. Thank you, Dave and Mr. Chimera. And good luck with the project.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Okay, moving on. Public hearing 2981, 504 Hazard Avenue. Is there roll call, please?
Okay, I'll read the advertisement first.
Okay.
The Infield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at their next regular meeting of Thursday, September 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the town, well, online for public hearing 2981, 504 Hazard Avenue, special permit application and site plan review for a proposed outdoor dining patio associated with RD Winery and Powder Hollow Brewery. Mark McAuliffe, applicant, 10 Water Street LLC owner, map 101, lot 216, industrial I-1 zone. Ken Nelson.
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
Virginia Higley. She's here. Francis Limo.
Here.
John Petronella.
Here.
Vinnie Grillo.
Here.
And Richard Suzak is here.
Is there anyone here for the applicant?
Yes.
State your
Yep.
name and address for the record, please.
This is Mike McManus of 504 Hazard Ave. I'm the owner of Powder Hollow Brewery, and I'm here with my partner, Mark McAuliffe, who runs RD Winery.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Sure thing. So today we're seeking approval to add a permanent outdoor patio attached with our tap room. It's going to be just a standard outdoor patio that you would see at any restaurant in town, but since we're in an industrial zone, we needed to get special permission.
Thank you. Anything else?
It's pretty standard setup. We're just looking to build a nice patio so that throughout the current situation and in future situation, we can have an area for our guests to be outside and enjoy the nice weather.
Do you serve any food?
Currently, we use food trucks under the COVID-19 rules, and long-term, we are granted through the state liquor control to be able to serve prepackaged food.
Great, thank you. Commissioners,
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
just wanted to let the applicant know that I own the property across the street. I don't live there. It's going to be turned into a farm. I just wanted to say that this won't affect my vote. You've been a very good neighbor and it won't affect my vote. But if you don't want me to vote, you need to say something now.
Are
You're all
you
set?
guys-
You're all set?
Are you guys okay with her voting?
Yeah, she voted on the last one, I believe, and we've always had no issues with our neighbors. So if it's not an issue for you guys, it's fine for us.
Not an issue with me. Nope.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question.
Commissioner Limo.
Yeah, so in the application or in the notice here, it says outside dining. So is that what you were talking about, what you're currently doing? Packaged food in the food trucks? Or are we thinking of doing something a little bigger in the future?
I think the term outdoor dining is just an area because technically under the food consumption rules, beer is food. So the dining is just the beverages. We're not looking to open a restaurant or open a kitchen at this point. We're just looking to continue doing exactly what we do on a regular basis now and including some outdoor seating for people.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner DeGray.
I just have two. One of the concerns was you were going to contain the stone that you're going to place on the parking lot. And the other one that I had concerned are you already have some tables out there. Are those tables going to be moved over to this area, or are they also going to be left out?
So,
I wasn't clear on that. That's all.
yep, to address your concerns, the stone is going to be used with a transition strip because the landlord had expressed the idea of if we decided to move out in a few years, he didn't want something that would destroy the parking lot. So we're putting in a very nice setup that can be removed if we ever decide to leave. So we'll use a transition strip to be able to keep the rocks from ever being able to leave that area while still maintaining the fire emergency exit. The second portion, it's pretty much just the tables that are there. If you've ever been to the location and you're looking at the entrance door, on the right-hand side, those tables will get moved. On the left-hand side of the door, those tables will be included in this patio diagram. The tables that are currently there fall under COVID. I think it's the temporary dining restrictions. So they're just there on a temporary basis.
All right, thank you. Those were
Yep.
the things that came to my attention. Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
I have a follow-up.
Go ahead,
My question.
Commissioner Alino.
On the outside, we spoke about the outside dining and the clarification because of the beer. The way you're planning on constructing this, should you want to move into outside dining in the future, is what you're constructing now going to be appropriate? Are you thinking about that so you don't have to come back or do any more upgrades or improvements? So you can just transition right into food if you guys thought down the road that was something you want to do?
Yes, if we ever determine that we want to transition into food or cheese place that we make on site, this would be an ideal setup. We're going to follow all the guidelines from the health department, and we're actually currently licensed for food. We just choose not to produce food. So the licensing structure for breweries, wineries is pretty complicated, and you pretty much get a food license just to do this anyway. So we're going to have the trash cans outside as per health code. We're going to have basically everything set up the way a restaurant would. We're just going to continue to operate the way we are. We like to make beer and wine. We don't like to cook food.
Oh, good. Just in case you wanted to do it in the future, you don't have to come back before us.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Because when I look at your plan, I noticed that the actual dining area extends, I guess, a little bit to the south of your main building facility. And right now, I know that's a two-way drive area, but when I look at the photographs that you sent, there's some white containers that sort of that divide that driveway and make it more of a one-way or one car at a time, roadway. And are you going to sort of maintain that, condition so that, it's apparent that, it's a slow go zone and, that you have to watch out for other cars as well as the patrons who are out there using that, facility?
So currently those are just there because under the temporary COVID dining rules, you're allowed to put a patio where you wouldn't normally be able to.
Right.
So we have guests that are sitting at tables that are very close to the parking lot. So we put those up as a safety precaution. The long-term plan, the building department, if we get approval tonight, would be including a drive safe area where the guests on the patio would not be as close to the cars so that we wouldn't need those white temporary barriers. If we determine that it still becomes an issue, although I don't think a car can make it through a Jersey barrier, those have been very nice to calm traffic and people have really seemed to enjoy them. But I think it's something we would have to assess after we build our permanent patio.
All right. That's not answer my question. Thank you.
So along Commissioner Suzak's comments, I see on the sketch where it does protrude past the end of the building, but it's not showing any of your drive lanes on this. So is that a drive lane? The cars come down that way?
Currently, where those white barriers are, that is where a car would go.
Okay.
The long-term patio that is outlined in the black line drawing, that is not where the fire department or a standard traffic of cars would ever go. So the long-term plan, that would not be an issue.
Okay, otherwise I would mandate Jersey barriers.
Yes.
Okay, commissioners, any other comments? Lori, do you have any comments? Jen?
I'm good.
I provided the staff report, basically just outlining Powder Hollow is the one who came in with the text amendment to allow this. So they met all the requirements that they proposed for this, which
Then
is
we're gonna have to deny them because we can't let them use this first. All right. Seeing no other comments, at this time, I'd like to open it up to the public. Public hearing 2981, 504 Hazard Avenue. Anybody like to speak in favor or against? Comments, questions, or concerns about this application? Please speak up. Going for the second time. And the third time. Hearing none. How does the commission want to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we close public hearing 2981.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded by Commissioner Alamo. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, at this time, I'll
Mr.
entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve public hearing 2981 with the resolution as prepared by the planning department dated September 10th, 2020, with the 17 total conditions with one site-specific condition that all tables, chairs, trash receptacles shall be removed at the end of each outdoor seating season.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner DeGray.
Motion's been seconded. Roll call, please.
Ken Nelson,
4.
Virginia Higley,
4.
Linda DeGray,
4.
Frank Alamo,
4.
John Petronella,
4.
Vinnie Grillo,
4.
and Richard Suzak is 4.
All in favor, none against. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I just want to say you guys are examples of, making the regulations more applicable to current needs. And I want to thank you for taking the time and doing that. And hopefully people watching see that we can change, and, things that may not be right, we can make them right together. I wish you guys the best of luck.
Good luck,
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Moving on, public hearing 2983, 20 Louise Drive. Is there any, or roll call, please?
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Go-
before we get started, I need to recuse myself. Lori, will you call me when it's over? So I can join it again?
Just turn your video and your audio off, Jenny.
Yeah, and somebody will call me back?
You don't have to. You'll be able to
Okay.
hear us talking. You'll hear it when it's over.
All right.
That's the easiest way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at the next regular meeting on Thursday, September 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. online. And for public hearing 2983, 20 Louise Drive, special permit application and site plan review to allow a hairstylist as a home occupation. Alicia Bosco, owner applicant, map 53, lot 310, R33 zone. Ken Nelson,
Here.
Linda DeGray,
Here.
Frank Alamo,
Here.
John Petronella,
Here.
Vinnie Grillo,
Here.
and Richard Suzak is here.
Okay, is there anybody for the applicant here? If so, state your name and address for the record.
My name's Allison Bosco, 20 Louise Drive, Enfield, Connecticut.
Okay, tell us a little bit about what you'd like to do.
So I'm currently a traveling licensed hairdresser, and with COVID and everything, some people aren't comfortable with me going in their homes at this time if they have loved ones with compromised immune systems. So what I'm hoping to do is be able to have them come to me. I can just do their haircuts in my house, where I can control my environment, their environment, and hopefully make them feel safer. and still continue to work during this unknowing time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner DeGray.
we got a letter today, or notice from the, planning department talking about, from the health department. Are you gonna be able to meet all of those requirements? Receive
I
that
believe I
letter?
will. I haven't contacted yet it was the North Central District Health Department.
Yes.
I have yet to contact them, but I am able to, I have the hand sanitizer stations. I would ask my client wears a mask. I also would wear a mask. I'm going to comply with whatever I can to meet their expectations.
Now, are you going to be washing their hair? What we've got in our packet doesn't really show what you've got for, it just shows that there's a chair in the middle of a room.
Yes, so at this time, I would just be doing hair cutting. If I'm approved to do this. Hair coloring, I would go still to their house, to my customer's house. But I could either have them come to my house with wet hair or just have a spray bottle to wet their hair if I need to. I also like to do dry hair cutting, so I can have them come with their hair already styled. And I like to do dry cutting as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the conditions of the health district were required of the last salon that we put in, but instead of listing them out like they did this time, they just sent us over the link that shows all the conditions. And I believe their conditions vary depending on the size of the salon. And that would be my concern is how many clients at a time are you looking to have?
It would vary. It would vary day to day, but at the most, I would say 4 to 5.
At one time?
No, not at one time. Sorry. One at a time. Hairdressers are not allowed to have more than one person anyways in a room or in a waiting room. So
Okay.
I would only have one customer at a time.
Okay, and do you have off-street parking for the customers to park?
I do. I have a driveway that would fit 4 cars, which my car, and then I would only have one customer car, but I do have the room for it.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions I have. I mean, the health department obviously will be a condition of approval along with any alterations you may make to your house.
Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions before I open it to the public?
I have a question.
Commissioner Alimo.
You're just wondering, the license you have is current, up to date for
Correct.
salon?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there anybody out there who would like to speak in favor or against you or ask questions, comments, and concerns for public hearing 2983 for a hair stylist home occupation business? Going for the first time. Going for the second time. Public hearing 2983, 20 Louise Drive. Going for the third time. Seeing none. Commissioners, how would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we close public hearing 2983.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner
Motion's
DeGray.
made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, public hearing 2983 is closed. Commissioners, how do you want to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution for public hearing 2983 dated September 10th as prepared by the planning department with currently they have 8 total conditions with 0 site-specific conditions, but I think that one of our site-specific conditions is that they comply with the North Central District Health Department requirements. So that would make it a total of 9 conditions.
And also, I'd like to add to that, Commissioner Suzak, the off-street parking, because we required that on Post Road.
Okay, yeah, because I looked at her, you know, her house, and she has a big driveway. It's
Right.
a car garage, and she can fit plenty of cars. But, and, you know, I guess they do have, you know, off-street parking there.
Okay, it's just that I want to try to stick with the same conditions we required on the other one.
Okay,
Okay. Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner DeGray.
Motion's made and seconded. Roll call.
Ken Nelson,
4.
Linda DeGray,
4.
Frank Alamo,
4.
John Piccinella,
4.
Vinnie Grillo, and Richard Suzak is 4.
All in favor, none against. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you, everybody.
No problem.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Before we move on, Jen and Lori, I just, you know, I looked at Post Road, and then I looked at this application also, and I gotta say, the regulation is very, very confusing. It goes both ways. You know, it says you can do personal services, but then it says no salons or barber shops. But then you guys say, but it's a personal service. So it goes back and forth, back and forth. We've approved 2 of these now. So I think we should really look at the regulation and remove the phrase where it says barbershop and salon. How do you guys feel about that? I'm just trying to clarify the regulation.
Well, I personally, I
Ginny,
would,
you're muted.
oh.
So I think,
I think that's a good
Oh.
idea. You did say remove them, correct?
Remove them, that particular wording. And I don't know why it's in there because it is a personal service. So
Thank you. I'm agreeing with you. I think
Lori,
that's a
what were you
great
gonna
idea.
say?
I
Pardon me?
agree that it should be removed, but you might want to make a condition that there only be, you know, one chair. Or,
I have no problem with that.
so.
You
But,
guys
I-
all
we're
in
gonna-
agreement?
We're gonna be doing a lot of modifications.
Well, just as we come across them, I try to, you know, you guys are all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, sorry about that, guys. I just. Oh, how can this? Hold on. Okay, moving on. Public hearing 2984, 74 Palumba Drive.
Okay.
Rich?
The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at their next regular meeting on Thursday, September 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. online for public hearing 2984, 74 Palumbo Drive, special permit application to allow a restaurant liquor permit, A&B Restaurant Inc., applicant, Palumbo Drive LLC owner, map 56, lot 25, business local BL zone. Ken Nelson,
Here.
Linda DeGray,
Here.
Virginia Higley,
Here.
Frank Alamo,
Here.
Don Piccinella,
Here.
Vinnie Grillo,
Here.
and Richard Suzak is here.
Okay, is there anybody here for the applicant that would like to speak?
Yes,
Or
Attorney Brian Silver with the law firm of Silver and Silver LLP out of New Britain, Connecticut, representing the applicant A&D Restaurant Incorporated.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
My client Demetrius Patazos is also participating. He's the principal of the A&D Restaurant Incorporated, the owner of the restaurant, and also the owner of the building, Palumba Drive LLC.
Great. All right, tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Certainly. My client was before this commission recently to get approvals for the construction of his restaurant build-out located at 74 Palumba Drive. Unfortunately, probably due to an oversight, he neglected to add the component of seeking the approval from the commission to be able to serve alcohol in conjunction with his restaurant. So we're here tonight seeking the permission of the commission for him to be able to sell alcoholic beverages in accordance with his restaurant. Obviously, it's going to be subject to the state of Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection Liquor Control Division. The first step in the process to apply with the state is to get the town's blessing, the town's approval from the zoning department that it is properly zoned for that use. I believe the plans of the interior of the restaurant already been before the commission. You probably have them in front of you now. Again, it's pretty straightforward. I believe he's looking to be able to sell alcohol with his restaurant.
Will there be an outside patio?
Yes, I believe he's already submitted plans for approval of a patio. He is not seeking any type of outside bar or anything like that. There will be dining tables out on the patio, again, subject to the state of Connecticut regulations, but I believe that's already been approved by the commission.
Right, the patio was approved, but without alcohol, it didn't have to be fenced in, but with alcohol, it has to be fenced in. I just want to make sure that it's going to be fenced in.
He'll do whatever he needs to do to comply with the town regulations regarding the fencing. I don't believe the state of Connecticut requires fencing from a liquor control standpoint. They sign off as long as the town's okay with the plans. So that is a requirement of the town. I'm sure Mr. Potatoes has no issues with that.
Right. Ginny, if I'm correct, right? When you're serving alcohol, you have to fence in the outside patio.
Yes.
Town regulations. Yeah, I thought so. Okay. And Mr. Demetros does not have an issue with doing that?
No.
No. Okay. Any other commissioners' questions? Lori or Jen, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, not here. Not from me, at least. It was pretty straightforward, just a standard liquor permit request.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm good.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to open public hearing 2984, 74 Palumba Drive to the public. Anybody with questions, comments, or concerns about this application, please speak up. Going for the first time? Second time? Public hearing 2984. Going for the third time? Seeing none? How would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we close public hearing 2984.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Limo.
Motion's made and seconded by Commissioner Alimo. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous. It's up to you guys. How do you want to move forward?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution for public hearing 2984 dated September 10th, as prepared by the planning department with the one condition listed, plus one additional site-specific condition that the outdoor dining area will be fenced in when serving liquor.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner DeGray.
Roll call, please.
Ken Nelson.
4.
Linda DeGray.
4.
Virginia Higley.
4.
Frank Alimo.
4.
John Petronella.
4.
Vinnie Grillo.
4.
And Richard Suzak is 4.
All in favor, none against. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
You too.
Seeing no old business, seeing no new business, other business, discussion regarding proposed lake overlay district text amendment language. Lori?
Hi, good evening. So a number of meetings ago, we discussed looking into possible modifications of the lake overlay district, because there seems to be a lot of variance requests and just a lot of people that can't do things that they want to do. And you did agree to that. Jen spent oodles of time trying to collect all of the data for all the different bulk and area requirements and what was happening out in the Lake District. She specifically did a study of just the Baker Pines Lake, which we found that there's like 95 lots, I think 95 or 94. The largest is half acre, the smallest is like 0.16 of an acre, which is like 7,000 square feet. Only about 25% of those lots are actually non-conforming with over the maximum 20%, which was kind of surprising. It just seemed a lot of people really felt that a lot more lots were way over the coverage. So basically, so 75% of those lots, regardless of size, are conforming to lot coverage. So it's like, well, we can't just do an overall, okay, change the coverage, lot coverage for all those lots, because it just wasn't going to work and be fair. So we looked at it and said, well, let's look at what the mean was, or the median was, and 58% of the lots under the median lot size were non-conforming to coverage. So most of the lots that are non-conforming are the smaller lots. So after looking at the numbers a little bit more, we figured if we went to anything under 10,500 square feet, which is under the median, then we could possibly have impervious coverage of up to 23% instead of 20%. That gives those smaller lots a little bit of wiggle room to have an extra shed or a deck or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily allow like the larger lots to have 23%. It only would accommodate for these smaller lots. So this is just a proposal, something to think about. I know that Mr. Daigle is on, and I know that this very much impacts him. He's been trying to get an addition put on, and he's had some, I believe he was denied at the CBA. So, it's just a starting point. Or if you like it, or if you don't like it, I will say that, increasing coverage around the lake area is not necessarily what the goal is. Usually it's the opposite. But we have these lots that were created in 1900, and they're so incongruous when it comes to size that we're trying to just kind of accommodate for just ease of use and I guess better ways to use their lots. So,
Mr. Chair,
Are you done, Lori?
Sure.
Commissioner DeGray.
Um,
Sorry.
I know that Mr. Daigle would like some kind of decision because he wants to build, but I really feel uncomfortable that you only looked at one area.
Mm-hmm.
We have two lakes. We need to look at both. We have to be fair to both lakes. So without having
Agree.
done any study on Crescent Lake, to make some kind of decision at this time, I feel would be unfair. Plus, we're having our regulations reviewed and rewritten, and I'm not taking anything away from you or Jen or our new assistant town planner, but maybe a new set of eyes looking at it might be helpful too, because not that they're any smarter, but sometimes just another outlook gives it a different idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my thought. So just with that said.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you that we really need to look at Crescent Lake, but we didn't want to spend much more time on this if you thought that this path was the wrong path. So
What we have to do is we have to be fair to both lakes, and they are the lake district. So, say, oh, well, we're only going to look at one, but we're not going to look at the other is kind of unfair to the Crescent Lake homeowners. So.
no, I agree. I even made that comment in the memo that we hadn't looked at the Crescent Lake region yet, but we need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have I guess an observation in terms of, obviously we know that there's a lot of non-conforming lots, especially with the smaller lot size and how they're really handcuffed from really expanding and making their properties a little more useful, recognizing today's modern standards of things and, possibly acquisition of personal items and whatnot. And you know, I guess just looking at the information that was submitted to us in terms of, you know, I guess the range of the larger lots were about a half an acre, which is like 22,000 square feet. And you know, looking at it, you know, from, let's say, an engineering viewpoint, normally, you know, you try to work with round numbers. So, you know, looking at it, you know, the smallest lot is 7,000 square feet. And I guess what I'm alluding to is possibly if the largest lot is at 22,000 square feet, if we take half of that, which would be at somewhere around 11,000 square feet, and, you know, use that as a benchmark where, you know, that's probably an average size where, you know, where at 11,000 square feet, everybody's a little bit more comfortable, but when you get a lot smaller than that, they get less compliant. And you know, rather than look at like a 23% coverage in terms of, you know, working with round numbers, it's always a little easier to say, you know, let's make it 25 in terms of, you know, I don't think a 2% increase over the 23% is going to be a dramatic impact on the actual coverage in terms of, you know, when we're talking about, you know, that kind of, you know, small lot.
215 square feet, Rich.
200 would be 2.
That's the difference between 23 and 25. Because you beat me to the punch. I was going to say the same thing.
So, but anyways, I think that, you know, and you know, I think that, you know, you're probably going to find that the Crescent Lake region should be similar. Again, I'm not that familiar with either or, you know, region in terms of, you know, I'm not that intimate and I don't go there that often. But one would have to believe that, you know, they all have the same limitations. They all have the same, you know, development criteria when things were being developed at certain periods of time. And so that, you know, I think that if we go down a certain path and I would be, like you said, I like to work with nice round numbers rather than, you know, some skewed number that might not make any sense. And I would sort of recommend that if we do go down this path, that we look at maybe possibly a quarter of an acre and 25% and say, you know, this is, you know, more than, you know, fair for anybody, you know, that is developing their property.
I agree with you 100%. 11,000 square feet is a good number and 25% lot coverage on a special permit.
Correct.
Because I think it should be site specific, and with those lots, they're shaped all different ways and stuff like that. And I really think that anybody should have to come to the commission if they're going to try to go in under this. And I would support everything you just said, Rich.
So,
Do you really think it needs to be a special permit?
What's that?
I would think that if we just made it clear that if your lot is of a certain size, that you may have up to a certain coverage. Otherwise, I mean, it just seems like that's how we have everything else. Like all the bulk area requirements are without a special permit.
Are we going to run into problems with setbacks?
No, because we'd still have the same setbacks. That would require a variance then.
Okay.
Well, I will say just one thing is that the current lake districts do allow for, the lake district overlays do allow for some type of relief to setbacks. But it's supposed to be for the, the setbacks cannot be reduced to an amount that's any less than the average of the setback for the block face, and then block face is not actually defined in our regulations. And that's one of the things that we wanted to get away from. But especially since it doesn't seem that really helps anyone anyway, when you actually do the numbers. So it looks, but there's no provision to provide any relief as to lot coverage. So I don't know if we want to consider any type of relief to at least front and rear setbacks or not, I don't know. But usually in my experience, setbacks and coverage seem to go hand in hand.
But that's why I was saying under a special permit, because then we could entertain, you know, if they are encroaching on a setback or something like that to get up to the 25%. And why are they going into a setback versus putting it in another area? That's the only reason I said it, Lori, is for the, you know,
Yeah, I just kind of feel like if we're gonna do the change, we may as well just do it. And if they have a setback issue, then we deal with it from either the regulation as it's stated now, or they go to the ZBA for a variance.
okay.
If there's a true hardship.
And
Why make
then-
things more difficult for them and you?
Okay,
when-
that's
when it
fine.
Could be
And
very straightforward.
why can't we encompass Crescent Lake in this same thing?
Oh, well, we can, and we should. We just kind of stopped where we did, so
Yeah.
we can, get your feel for things.
Mhm.
I mean, and you're going higher than I anticipated, so there you go. So that's good.
Right.
then.
Yeah, and just for clarification, the Lake Overlay District regulations encompass both Shaker Pines Lake and Crescent Lake. It's just that I did calculations for all of the properties for lot and bulk, all of the setbacks and area and coverage for every property around that lake. It was the bigger lake with more varying properties. It took a really long time to gather the data and then crunch the numbers. So we sort of ran with that. That's not to say that we can't do it for Crescent Lake, but
Shaker Pines is bigger than Crescent Lake?
the number of properties around it.
Oh, all right,
Sorry, I should have clarified. Yeah, it was more data collection than it would have been for Crescent.
right. Well, I would absolutely agree we should include Crescent Lake in this. They're all in the Lake Overlay District, so that would basically answer Linda's question. Commissioners, any other questions or comments?
I have one, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Alamo.
Will this include the properties that are actually on the water where their backyard is on the lake? That are touching the lake? Is it
I
gonna be
think
everything?
it actually
Yes.
only includes those.
Only those?
Right. Those properties that are like on the other side of the street are not actually part of the Lake District.
Okay, so it's only the ones that surround the lake directly?
Right, that actually abut the lake.
Okay, thank you.
Because they're handicapped with the wetlands restrictions, right? And the restricted areas and stuff like that, where across the street doesn't have any of those restrictions.
Right, flood and other things.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear, because when you talk Shaker Pines, really, some of the streets come off of North Maple Street. I mean,
Yep.
It's large.
Yep, okay. Any other commissioners' comments? How do you guys feel with that? 11,000 square feet, 25% lot coverage, and it is for both lakes, the Lake District. You guys good with it?
I'm still would like to have Crescent Lake looked at. That's my feeling.
What are we looking at, Linda?
I
What
don't
do you-
know. I don't know what Crescent Lake properties look like. What if there's one that's only, I don't know. I'm just concerned that, we're saying 25%, but what if one of these properties is, say, 5,000 square feet, and 25% of 5,000 square feet, you're practically in your neighbor's yard. So
Well, 25% of anything is the same on anything.
I know, but I'm just saying is I don't want people to come in and think that, oh, they're going to get a variance and be 5 feet from the property line. And that variance goes from the lake all the way out to the street. It doesn't just stop in this one little corner that they want. I want people to be very clear and understanding. And I just feel uncomfortable. Only one lake was looked at. It just feels incomplete to me.
That's very fair. So, I mean, what we will do is do a quick study of the Crescent Lake, which has less lots. So
Right, I think there's very few houses touching the lake up there.
Yeah.
Compared
So,
to-
yeah,
So
it should
should
be
be quick.
faster. And we
Yeah.
won't be doing the full Vulcan area, front yard, backyard, and all of that.
I'm just
And what we
like
could do is map them
complete
out for you.
Thank you. That's all. Complete information. That's all I'm
Mhm.
looking for.
I'm okay with the way it is, because we're not saying 25,000 square feet, Because then I could totally agree with Linda's point. We're saying 25%. So, and it's anything under 11,000 square feet. So it's pretty detailed on what can be done and what can't be. And then if you're getting into side yard setbacks and a variance, that has nothing to do with this. That's a whole variance issue. That's something totally different that they'd have to come back for. I'm okay the way it's written. Other commissioners?
I'm good with it.
Jenny?
It sounds doable.
John?
I have no major issue at this time. I kind of see where Linda's coming from, Commissioner DeGray's coming from, but getting complete information just
Yeah.
to cover all bases, though.
Yeah.
Vinny?
See, I understand what you're saying and I like what you're saying. I think it's a good fit for what's over there. But I'm leaning towards Linda's concern that we do it correctly. I'm not to say that your is not correct. I'm just saying that we want to make sure we do our due diligence with Crescent Lake. I'm of the opinion that Crescent Lake lots are bigger than Shaker Pines because there's not as many houses on that lake. But I don't know that, and what if they're all over 11,000? Then it won't do anything for them and maybe they need to be looked at also. So I don't know. I'm just kind of up in the air on both sides.
Commissioner Grillo?
Yeah, I'm okay with it, to be honest with you. Linda said she's gonna look into the other lake. I believe she's going to. They're gonna be both combined. I've worked at both lakes. I personally don't see a difference between the two as far as the lots. I've seen them both. So I'm okay with what you're saying.
Okay, Commissioner Alimo?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, do we have to have this closed out tonight?
No, but we can give Lori consensus to move forward. And while she's moving forward, maybe she can get Linda the information, Linda and Ginny.
That's what I was thinking.
Information, but at least they know that we're good with what Rich Suzak came up with. And that's how we're going to proceed forward. And in the meantime, Linda and Ginny will get their information about Crescent Lake.
Yep. Yep. Now, is that lot
Sounds like a
coverage, does
plan.
that lot coverage include outbuildings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's lot coverage. Covers in-ground swimming pools, decks, everything.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right, Lori?
So I just did a real quick study, just kind of through the GIS and picking on some of the smallest lots. They're ranging from 0.15 of an acre to 0.27 of an acre.
So 11,000 square feet and under, how many lots does this even affect?
Right, well,
on
I have to
Crescent Lake?
count, but I'm just saying that maybe, about half, I'm gonna say, maybe a little less than half.
Yeah.
But I'm just doing real quick on GIS, but.
I can share my.
But we can figure that out though.
Okay, that's fine. At least you got consensus to move forward with the 11,000 and 25%.
Mhm. And we'll show
And
what
the
parcels
setbacks,
it
they
will
have to go
affect.
for variance.
Sorry, Lori, go ahead.
We will show on a graphic what parcels will actually be affected.
Okay.
For both lakes. We could do
All
that
right.
easily.
Okay. Thank you.
Jen, did you want to show something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I had the GIS up if they wanted me to share the screen to show them what the lots look like around Crescent Lake and Shaker Pines. But if you'd rather move forward, that's.
I just a question. I don't know if it's appropriate or not through the chair. I see Mr. Daigle's on, and I know he was on our agenda a couple of times in the past. I think he went before ZBA. Is this satisfying his concerns, or is this resolving the issue he had, or?
It's increasing what he asked for.
Right, it actually is more than he would have been asking for at the variance.
So it's a moot point for him now? Is this moving on?
Well, it's not, it's a moot point once these are adopted.
Okay.
which is.
I'm asking because I know he's been on our agenda a couple of times and was tabled.
Absolutely.
And I see him here
Yeah.
this evening, so.
Right.
Okay.
We're
Thank you.
trying to work with
No.
him and for him and others.
No, I'm just, that way it's fair for everybody and Mr. Dago is satisfied, I hope. Thank you.
Well, he's shaking his head, so I hope so too.
Thank you.
Can we make it everything but his lot? Okay,
comment.
so you got consensus to move forward. Thanks, Lori and Jen, for your work on this. And just when you get a chance, email us the information about Crescent Lake. But go ahead and do what you got to do. I don't know if you got to send it to Krog or we got to vote or how you got to do it.
But we'll make sure it's done by executive orders at this point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is correspondence. Any correspondence? Commissioners' correspondence?
Mr. Chair, I guess I sent them a memo out, possibly at the early August date. I guess I was contacted by somebody who lives on Hazard Avenue about somebody having like a flea market consignment shop in their house. And, you know, I'm just wondering, you know, is that allowed in, you know, I guess that, I forget exactly what the number is, 329 or something like that, Hazard Avenue, where, you know, they have a sign out that says, you know, drop off your wares and we'll sell them for it to you. And, you know, because I know that, you know, we are trying to get away from a flea market type of situation for, you know, selling things consistently. You know, obviously you can have a tag sale and occasionally have a tag sale, but, you know, to have people, you know, utilize, you know, current, you know, adjacent properties and driveways for, you know, viewing items that somebody might be selling consistently and forever is probably, you know, should be controlled somewhat, where, you know, we have, they come before us and they tell us what they're doing, and then we can determine whether it's an appropriate, you know, have at a home, as a home occupation, similar to the hairdresser that just came in.
We can look into that. I can say that I know a lot of those properties over there are split zoned, and some of them are a little funky. So we'll definitely look into that to see if it's a violation or if they need to.
Because I can send you that email again. You know, like I said, it just, you know, I just thought about it, you know, while we were, you know, talking. Because the other thing I noticed is that there's some activity at, I believe, at 179 South Road or 178 South Road, you know, down where the Phoenix building was, where they're improving their parking lot. But I guess what I noticed is there was a depression in the front of the yard that they're filling in. And I was wondering if that was kind of a retention basin or not. And all of a sudden somebody doesn't really recognize it as being a retention basin. And they start filling it in because of the fact that they're not knowledgeable enough that, oh, by the way, that's where we're storing our water.
I believe that project got shut down.
Oh,
Lori?
yeah, it did. Somebody gave us an anonymous tip.
You can
Not
say
so
it was me, Rich. I drove by and I saw him clear cutting and I called Lori right away because that looks like a detention pond to me also.
Yeah, and then you know, I live on South Road, so I drive by it all the time. I'm saying, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
So we did go out there. We have made them stop work. They've come in and they're going to wetlands at this point. They do want to fill that depression in, and I thought the exact same thing, that it looked like it may have been designed as a detention basin, but we looked at the original plans and it did not, and it was not. So they are planning on taking the dirt that they take out from the wetlands, dredging and putting it there, and they just want to level it out. So, but it does have an application for
for their
wetlands.
permit, then you know, I'm all for whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one. On the corner of Best Road and Steel Road, there is a property that has to have, I'm gonna say, at least 15 cars. And they have a fence running down Steel Road, and there's probably, I'm gonna say 5 to 8 cars backed up to the fence right along the road on the inside of the property. There's auto parts and stuff all over the place in the backyard. And I was told somebody went out there and they said that the property was fine. There's no way that property's fine. If we could get somebody back out there to look at it, I don't know if somebody just said that to try to, stop any action against them. But I have gotten numerous complaints about it. It can be seen from a roadway. And believe it or not, they look like they're all junk vehicles. So something's
We'll have
going.
Rick take a look.
Okay, thank you.
Also, I have one.
Hold on one second, Linda. And Best Road goes out to Steele in 2 places. So they will know the property when they see it. Make sure they're not looking at the first Best to Steele, because that'll look good and they'll say there's nothing wrong here.
The one that I am concerned about is the Pride Station here up at the state line. The empty building next door, right in Connecticut, it looks like crap. It's overgrown. The property isn't really being taken care of. I know that he has some plan, but I don't know what it is, but they should be at least taking care of the property, cutting the, they've got bushes growing up alongside the building. It looks terrible. I mean, that's the first property you see coming in from Massachusetts and Connecticut. So I'm concerned about that. It never looked the way it does now. Let's put it that way.
Okay, we'll look into that one too.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Jenny, anything?
Nope,
Nothing? Okay.
nope, I'll have something for the next meeting.
Well, we got an early meeting tonight, so we don't know what next meeting is. Speak up. Okay. Town planners report.
We're busy. We have hired a zoning enforcement technician to take the place of the secretary's position of Am Schweitzer. She literally started today. She's going to have to go through Casio training, but I think she's going to work out really good. So we finally have somebody to at least answer phones and help us at the counter and do administrative duties and things of that, help us with legal notices and all of the agendas. And so.
Does she have a name?
Yeah, yes. Nicole Marcura. Hold on. What's his name? Maruca. It's Maruca, M-A-R-U-C-A. So she just started today. And of course we have Savannah Nicole in the office. So that's going to be a challenge just to keep them separated from who are we calling? Savannah Nicole is also doing quite well. And hopefully we're going to be able to move forward soon. We've been working on the appeal of 113 North Maple. So hopefully that's going to go away. But today, I think yesterday, the 8th was the day that we had to do part of the return of record. So we work on that.
When does that go to court, Lori?
Well, we're hoping it doesn't. That's the goal.
So does the judge have to hear it to deny it?
So the attorney for the applicant is actually kind of being the lead for this one. So it's Win Stanley's attorney. And so they're kind of taking the lead. So I'm not exactly sure what the process is going to be, but they're going to try to get it thrown out, basically.
Okay, well, just keep us up to date as things progress.
Which address? Which one was that?
Win Stanley.
Actually, we really probably shouldn't be talking about this. It is pending litigation, so.
Right, well, just keep us up to date.
Yeah. So what else have we been working on? Oh, Monday we meet with Don Poland with Goldman and York to discuss the beginnings of our POCD and zoning regulation update.
Good.
So,
Good. Good.
so,
That's it?
well, that's it for now.
We're also working on updating our permitting software to make it more
Oh,
user
that's right.
friendly, and it's software from the early 2000s, so we're coming into the 2020s.
Good.
Yeah, the building department's got pretty good software. It works pretty good. Okay, that's it?
That's it.
Administrative approval.
Oh,
I-
that.
Really, Linda? That's what's next? Okay, thank you.
Done.
Administrative approval report.
So this commission had previously approved an addition to 10 Hazard Avenue to accommodate the needs of the Burlington Coat Factory. In review under the fire marshal for code requirements, the fire marshal wanted upgrades to the building, which would require an extra 400 square feet of building. So that we administratively approved it. There's no impact to impervious coverage because the area that will be built on was previously impervious anyway. So.
Okay, good. Thank you. Applications to be received.
We have that one public hearing listed, 10 Duff Drive. And that's just for a residential addition, which is an expansion of a non-conforming structure. It's waiting for wetlands approval, so that's why it wasn't on tonight. Other
Is
than
this same thing along the lines of Burnham or that street where all the houses are too close to the road?
yeah,
And are you going to try to handle that administratively?
well, it's all expansions of non-conforming structures require a special permit, so it's going to be required to go to public
It's a
hearing.
public hearing.
Yeah. Okay. That's it?
Yep, so I'm sure we'll have more for next time. I know that we are working on lake regulations, and then we'll be moving forward with 55 Cottage Road. And as always, we are always working with new applicants, and we're just waiting for people to file formal applications.
Great. Opportunities, unresolved issues.
Well, we gave you the legal opinion on the combining of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. At this time, I don't believe it's been scheduled to go before town council. That's what
They haven't even had a regular meeting, have they?
Yeah. Well, we kind of had one on Tuesday night. It was almost regular, but not quite.
That was a special meeting.
Yeah.
Public participation is not allowed.
So I'm not sure where to go with this for now.
Well, we'll wait and see when they get it on their agenda. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Oh, I just have
So
one
moved.
item.
No, hold on. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say that Dane Thorogood actually has resigned from the commission. So,
Okay. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Commissioner Higley.
Motion's
Second.
made and seconded by Commissioner DeGray. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, everybody have a great night. Thank you.
Aye, you're welcome.
thank
night.
you.
You too. Good night.
Bye.
good night.